Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about variables and constants. Now you might be have just gotten triggered because back in you remember maybe middle school or junior high or whatever you call it, or early high school, you learned about some words called variable and constants in pre-algebra or algebra, and variables just kind of confused the holy crap out of you. And what I'd like to say is, don't let it trigger you. Let's rewire your brain, because variables and constants are especially variables, are very, very powerful tools that we have. And in fact, I'm convinced that if you had learned algebra through the lens of programming, the variables would not have been complicated for you at all. Okay, so we're going to talk about variables in this video, and I'm going to show you how to use a variable. But first, let's talk about what is a variable. Okay. So a variable, it kind of matches up with constant. So constant and variable, I chose to talk about these in the same video because they're similar, however they're different. Okay, so a variable, what I want you to do is think about a variable is a placeholder. Okay, it's a placeholder that I could put it in the middle of a math problem, which is what you did in algebra. So say like you had x plus y equals z, okay, or 24 plus x equals y, and the x was just a placeholder because you were always going to be adding 24 to that variable. So if x was equal to 24, then y would have been 48. We can use that in websites because what we could do is say we could have a variable, instead of calling it x, we could call it first name. And then in our website, we could say hello variable first name, and that variable first name could be different for each person visiting our website. So then we could say hello Curtis, or hello Denise, or hello Bob, or whatever, whatever the first name is in that variable could be printed to the screen. Now our website becomes dynamic because we can use variables. Variables are one of the things that's most responsible for making our websites dynamic, okay, meaning that they change. A variable is just a placeholder, and in this case what we do is we use a placeholder inside the memory on the computer, and it stores that placeholder, whatever we put in that placeholder. We could put a first name, we could put a number, we could put any of the data types that we talked about in the previous video. We can actually store those in a variable, put them in memory, and then access those multiple times throughout our scripts. We could change them and then access them again. Well, we can with variables. Now we can't with constants, because a constant is we store that in memory as well. It's a placeholder that we can store in memory, but a constant doesn't change. That's why it's called a constant. It can't change. So if I set a constant up and then I use it through my script, I can use it as many times as I want, but it's going to be the same thing every time. Now a variable we could use, let's say we have a total, and throughout our script we're going to keep adding a number to that total, and then at the very end we can print that, and it's going to be the sum that we've added through the whole script. Okay, a variable or a constant, we can't do that, but a variable we can change and update throughout our program, and that's why it's called a variable. But both a variable and a constant are a way for us to store something in memory and then access that later. Some people like to describe it as a bowl. Like you take a bowl and you put a label on it and you say that my label is first name, and I'm going to put a string in there, and then later I'm going to pull that bowl out and I'm going to access what's in that bowl. That would be a string called Curtis. I don't know if that's helpful to think about it that way. It could be. I guess a lot of people use that analogy. But let's get in and show you what a variable is. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my screen, and first and foremost I want to make sure that we have our servers up and running, our virtual servers. So we're just going to type sudo opt lamp examp and start, and we'll put in our password, and mine is already running. Maybe yours is too from the last video if you're following along, or maybe you have to restart your computer or whatever, but you need to rerun this. And this is the command on Linux. It's going to be a little bit different on Mac and a little bit different on Windows. And what I'd like for you to do is when I do this, follow along with me so that you can memorize the starting and stopping and how you set that up on your computer. Okay, once we have that set up, go ahead and navigate to your htdocs folder. So in my case, it's opt-lamp htdocs. And if I ls here, we have a folder that we created called PHP, and this is what we're working in our tutorial. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear this. I'll print working directory so you can see where I'm at. And inside here, I'm gonna create a new file with the touch command, and I'm going to call this file variables, okay, .php. Now, if we go back to our editor now, we have a new file called variables. So I'm gonna close our data types from the last video. And inside this file, let's go ahead and open our PHP tags, and we'll skip down a few lines and let's close our PHP tags. All right, so how do we make a constant? So let's go ahead and do a constant real quick. The constant, you use the keyword define, and then you open and close some parentheses, okay? So you open and close a paren, and then we're gonna give this a name. So we're inside these quotes here. Now, you don't have to do this, but the standard for naming a constant is going to be all uppercase, and this will just help remind you that you can't change this. So I'm going to use uppercase site title, and then we have to give it a value here. So the value for this, let's just do it PHP. We'll do oops, I got my caps lock on, PHP rules. So this will be our site title. Now I did site underscore title, all uppercase. So what we do to define a constant, and what I'm gonna do here is go ahead and do a comment above this. So we'll just say setting up a constant, okay? Now this setting up a constant, we use the define, and then the first, we call these parameters here. So this is a built-in PHP function to set up a constant. And we give it a name. This is what we want to label it, or this is how we're storing it so we can access it later, but it's just uppercase site title. And then we can put whatever we want in here. So we can use that later in our script, like say we can use our echo, and instead of typing PHP rules, we could actually just type, without quotes, we could just type site underscore title, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And now if we navigate in our browser, let's go to your browser and go to our variables. Oops, it is case sensitive here, so variables.php. And now you can see that we just have echoed PHP rules. Now the reason it did that is because we defined in memory, in RAM, or in our computer's memory, that site title is to be set to PHP rules. Now later, if I access that by just typing site title, there's no quotes on this here because it's already set up. So this lets PHP know I'm trying to access the constant called site title. So that's constants. A little bit more useful though is we can actually do a variable, and let me show you what that looks like. So let's go ahead and just echo a break tag here to our screen. And down here, let's say setting up a variable. So variables, oops, let me give this a little space here, setting up a variable. Now a variable starts with a $sign, okay? So all variables start with a $sign, and then you can name them pretty much whatever you want, but I would say stick to lowercase and uppercase letters to start it with. You can use numbers in it, but it can't start with a number. So if you just get used to doing something like this, first name, or even first underscore name, this is how you can set up a variable. So I'm going to go ahead and use this first, and this is called a snake case here, where I have a lowercase and then I come in and use uppercase on the end. Now these are case sensitive, so we're going to have to access this the same later, but inside quotes I'm going to set So the way you do this on a variable is we set up a variable name by starting it with a $sign. Then we create the name of the variable that we want to label it as. And then we use an equal sign. Oops, that was weird. We use an equal sign, and then we can store whatever we want in there. Remember all those different data types? In this case, I'm going to store the data type of a string of my first name in here. So now what we could do is we could actually, at the top of our page or something, we can echo something like hello and then the first name or whatever's in that variable. So I can actually say hello, and then I put a space here, and then what we're going to do here is, because we want to say the first name, we're going to concatenate with a period first name. Okay, so don't worry too much if you don't know what this is, but basically what we're doing is we're going to echo two things out. We're going to echo the string of hello with a space, a white space there, and then we're going to add on to the end of that our whatever's in our variable. So if I save that now and we go back here, we can see hello Curtis. I can also, that's called concatenation when we add multiple things together. I can also use concatenation to add on an exclamation point at the end of that, and we can refresh that, and now it says hello Curtis. So imagine that we had a website where in a database we stored people, they logged into our site, and we stored their first name in something we call a database. And then when they come back to the site and they log in, we can now access whatever we stored for that login as the first name, and we can print that to the screen. And that's exactly some of the stuff that we're going to be learning later in the series. But for now, we can just understand that a variable is a placeholder that gets put in memory, and we can use that throughout our script. And if I change this to say like Bob, then of course if I save and go back here, now it's going to say hello Bob. The one thing that I wanted to point out though is that we could do multiple changes to our variable. So now we have this variable called first name, and what I could do is I'm going to go ahead and echo a break tag just to give ourselves a space, and now I could actually reset first name equal to Bob. Okay, and then if I go ahead and echo hello, and we concatenate on our first name again, and then we concatenate on that, now it's going to say hello Bob. But the first one in memory, when it came to this point, now remember our scripts actually execute from the top down, so it's going to have Curtis stored in this first name first, this first name variable, and so when it echoes hello first name, it's going to say Curtis. But then when it gets down here, we're resetting, since it's a variable it can change, we're changing that first name to Bob. And then when we echo first name again, now it's going to say hello Bob. So let's go ahead and refresh and see that in action. So we have hello Curtis and hello Bob. So that's pretty cool, because now we know that variables can change throughout our scripts. Let me show you a little bit more of a useful reason that you might want to do that. So let's say Curtis's age is 20. So we'll have an integer of 20. Then Curtis gets a little older, and Curtis actually, a decade goes by. Okay, so in a blink of an eye, Curtis, then we can do something here. Age is equal to age plus 10. Okay, so we can actually use this in math. And then, holy crap, another decade has gone by, and now for whatever reason, Curtis is another decade older. So now what I can do is first of all, let's go up here, and I'm going to echo another break tag, which is super annoying. We're going to learn something later to make that a whole lot easier, but for now, I don't want to confuse anyone. So we have a break tag here. So now down here, I can say echo Curtis is, and then we'll do a space, and then we'll concatenate on age, and now we'll concatenate on years old. What an old man. All right, so now we go and refresh, and we see Curtis is 40 years old. Now I need to add a space there. So we'll add a space right there so that the sentence makes a little more sense. It says Curtis is 40 years old. Now, what's interesting about this is we set that to 20, right? But then the next line in our script, we took it and we added 10 years to it. And then we added another 10 years. And Curtis is no longer 20 years old. Now he's almost dead in the grave, right? So, you know, you guys probably look at me, most of you guys, I realize that most of my YouTube viewers range in age from 18 to 24. And then my second most age group that watches my channel is from 24 to 34. So I'm an old man compared to most of you guys, but you can look at that as like I'm old and dumb and senile, or you can look at it as I'm old and these gray hairs in my beard means wisdom. All right, so however you want to look at that, I'm cool with it. But look, I'm getting old, I understand. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to pass on my knowledge to you guys so that you can step up and do something better than I did in my life. All right, so here we go. So we have age, and that is a variable that we stored in memory as a bucket right in our memory on our computer. And then our script actually updated this and updated it again. And then later we can access that. And then we could update it again and access it again as many times as we want throughout our script, and then we can change it because age is just a variable that we point to and we can update it. Now, we can't update this site title again. We'll actually get an error if we try to update that. So anyhow, I hope that makes sense. Guys, this is one of the most important things we're going to learn about programming is this concept of variables. Variables are a placeholder that we could store data types in. Now in the last video we talked about data types, but we could store a data type in these placeholders and then access those later in our script. And in fact, we can do multiple variables in our script. So let me do this. We can say first name, and we'll concatenate on our is. Now let's go back. We saved it and refresh. And now it looks the same, except for now it says Bob is 40 years old. What an old man. Because our last updated first name was Bob. So when it gets down here and we access it again, we have the age variable and we have the first name variable. And we're using it all in one line of code. So that's some of the power of variables. Now, it becomes way more powerful later when we get to do things like store this information in a database or have people fill out a form and we're doing something with that. And at the end of this course, I'm going to show you a simple little thing we'll build to interact with the user and then use their input as variables, and then we can do something with that. All right, so that's it for variables and constants. Just try to understand that a variable can change, a constant cannot, but they're both placeholders that we can stuff in memory and we can put data types in them. All right, so I hope that makes sense, and I will see you guys in the next video.